Hi, my name is Heather Alderman, and I am the Executive Director of COSMA. And I'm here today with Mark Vermillion from Wichita State University. And we are doing a series of interviews to understand administrators' personal stories, what their experiences have been, how they've gotten to these positions. So I'm going to talk to Mark today. And Mark, I'd like you to introduce yourself, given your titles, and talk about the college that you are in at Wichita State.
Appreciate it. First of all, thank you for doing this. I know, COSMA's taken kind of a leadership role in having some of these discussions in terms of professional development and kind of career support. So I'm always happy to be a part of it. My name is Mark Vermillion, obviously, and I am the interim associate dean for the College of Applied Studies here at Wichita State University. I'm also the chair for the Department of Sport Management. And then I'm also the director for the Organizational Leadership and Learning degree program. And a little bit, we are in the College of Applied Studies, which a lot of people initially are like, what is that? Well, from 1927 to 2018, we were the College of Education. If that kind of gives you a little bit of context. Now, because we have athletic training, exercise science, sport management, counseling education, educational school psychology, we have a lot of degree programs that are not directly connected to teacher preparation. So the decision was made at that point to try to be a little bit more inclusive, and that's where the College of Applied Studies came about. And we're here in Wichita, Kansas. So we are an urban serving institution. Wichita is the largest city in the state of Kansas. A bit of a quirk there because most of Kansas City is in Missouri, but we still hold on to the title a little bit. But we still have a lot of those kind of dynamics that are present. So we're a research-based institution that still is heavily involved in community engagement, research, scholarship activities, those types of things. And we're roughly about 16,000 students. It kind of gives the folks viewing this a little bit of context about who we are and what we do, kind of a thing. So.
Right, and that's very important. Yeah. So how did you get this position of interim dean?
Interim associate dean. I don't want to give myself a promotion there. That's
sorry,
a whole separate conversation. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So, as tends to happen within higher education, you might have leadership changes. And here at Wichita State, we had leadership change at the university level. And so we had some changes in university president leadership, which then impacted the provost. That's the chief academic officer here at Wichita State. And so our dean of the college at the time ascended up to the provost position. The associate dean ascended to the dean position. So then I was asked to move ascend from the department chair position to the interim associate dean. Interestingly enough, that's how I became department chair. So 7-8 years ago, sort of the same thing happened. There were some changes at the university level and then at the college level in terms of leadership. So the department chair at the time, became the associate dean, and I was just a graduate coordinator, I guess, at that point. And so then I moved up to the chair position. So, a lot of the leadership, well, not a lot, all of the leadership positions, sort of formally defined leadership positions I've had, they really have been the result of sort of moving up within kind of the hierarchical structure of Wichita State as compared to me necessarily applying for a particular position. So it's kind of a unique spin on things, I guess you might say.
Is that common? Is that a Wichita State thing, or do you think that happens in other institutions such as like yours?
I've heard anecdotally, I've heard stories from colleagues that it can be common. It's pretty common here at Wichita State, kind of a talent pipeline thing in terms of cultivating talent internally and then moving them up. Pretty unique institution sometimes in terms of how we do and approach things. And so the idea of kind of holding on to that talent, something that's pretty important to the institution. And that's kind of the thing I think is really important here is each college or university setting is going to be unique. And then within that ecosystem, there are other additional ecosystems. And so I've heard folks at other institutions, large and small, that have kind of traveled a similar path that I have. But then I've also, there is some utility in being able to hire folks from outside your institution to kind of bring them in. So I think it's really just sort of dependent. I've heard some folks that have gone through some similar things as I have. But then I've also, I definitely know folks that, choose to move and kind of grow their skill set and choose this as a career trajectory, which usually means moving institutions.
Right. Did you do any preparation, or is there any training or any sort of assistance you received in order to be able to, complete the functions of this position?
Yes and no. So, depending on which leadership change you kind of go into, there are a bevy of trainings from the university, right? So you need to have access to the different systems and all that kind of stuff. So there is that kind of technical aspect, which can be a little overwhelming because, as a faculty member, you're not necessarily engaging with some of these systems on a regular basis, if at all. And so being able to kind of wrap your head around that. So that's just kind of something you put on the to-do list, and you start going to your trainings and you make sure you've got your resources. And I'm a big fan of, I will try to learn these things myself, but we also have folks here at the institution that this is what they do. They train folks, they troubleshoot. So I'm not shy about picking up the phone or shooting off an email saying, hey, need a little bit of help on this one. But internally within the college, one of the things that was a really supportive ecosystem, because luckily I'd been in our college here at WSU for a number of years. Yeah. And so I'd already had some of those personal relationships developed, and those continued. And that really sort of served as an informal training mechanism. So I knew that whether it was, talking to Clay or Shirley or Jody or whomever, I knew I had some resources that I could just call upon and be like, hey, how do you approach this? There's the technical aspect of the job with whether it's all your memos, in terms of how we report data, how we collect data, those types of things. And those resources here on campus, getting to know those people has been really, really helpful. But it's kind of a feeling out process. And I think that's, each person has their own comfort level in terms of picking up the phone or reaching out to people. I tend to personally, I tend to try to I kind of struggle, in the dark alone on my own. And then when I get like, I can't figure this out, that's normally when I usually reach out. But that's not necessarily because of any type of system here that promoted that approach. That's more of a personal disposition. But there's a lot of kind of supportive mechanisms around it, in addition to the technical trainings. And really my job is to kind of bring those things together.
Right. And well, what other challenges would you say that you faced in this position, besides trying to figure out for yourself when you need to ask for assistance and when you can kind of forge ahead?
Yeah, I think there's a technical learning curve that is unique. And I've heard other administrators, especially maybe with sport management or similar backgrounds, have talked about this as part of the COSM administrator meeting that we get together. So we're in a college where sport management is part of it. But I also learned a lot about accreditation for counseling education, learning about CAPE accreditation for the folks involved in teacher preparation, and how they structure their programs is very different than maybe how we structure our programs, or, learning about exercise science and athletic training. So you have that, I was talking about that kind of learning the technical aspects of the job with the systems and things like that. Well, then there's all this sort of technical content that you need to, and that's kind of like the metaphor, drinking from a fire hose, because once you get to this position, it's like, okay, well, you're going to be involved in supporting the CAPE accrediting site visit. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn about
what's that.
Right. And I had to Google and figure out what CAPE was, and that was an acronym, and then CAPE counseling education, and diving into that, and then learning, okay, well, we need to coordinate a site visit during a pandemic. So what FERPA rules and laws do we have to, kind of balance, and those types of things. So there was some of that going on, and I think that one of the bigger challenges is, I think, and I'll speak for myself, but as a faculty member, I mean, you're hired as a kind of a content expert.
Mhm.
That content is broad in terms of, functions and operations within sport management, or whether it's something really, really specific. So for me, it's sports sociology, psychology, ethics, that kind of stuff. So pretty narrowly defined. And that's your world for a long time.
Right.
And you get pretty good at it. You're very efficient. You feel pretty comfortable with the information. And then you need to go into an environment where you don't know as much.
Yeah.
And so it's being able to take in that information and start learning and start creating your own personal organization systems, which may be different than what you used as you were a faculty member.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say you're mentoring a junior faculty member, and they want to move up the hierarchy. And, unlike your situation where it sort of evolved, how would you, what kinds of words of wisdom would you share with them about how to prepare so that they are attractive, or can show that they could actually understand or do aspects of the job in order to be able to apply for it or to indicate that they're interested?
Now, I think that's a really good question, because it really goes back, and I wouldn't say I could provide any words of wisdom, not my opinion. But one of the things is I would almost kind of think back to when folks were applying for that initial faculty job, right? And you do research on the position, because one of the things is administrators, the cultural and the logistical expectations of an administrator are going to vary based upon the college, the department, programs, and institutions.
Right.
So again, I'll just speak from my experience here at Wichita State. So in other schools, and I've heard from colleagues, right? So as you move to maybe a chair and then eventually an assistant or associate dean, and then kind of going that way, the decision-making process for some folks, it involves kind of their previous scholarship, right? And so there's a sense of prestige in terms of moving. It's almost like an honorary understanding that this person has been very impactful in education within their discipline and those types of things. And that's a wonderful honor. That is a little bit different than at least how things are in my experience here at this institution, where these positions are a nice sort of amalgamation of management and leadership. So they're very technical oriented, but then you need to have the interpersonal skills of being able to work with donors, being able to work with different stakeholders and those types of things. So it's really kind of a mishmash. And so the thing that I would ask those folks, or maybe recommend, is try to do your research. And I know that's difficult if you don't necessarily know someone at that institution, but try to figure out what the cultural and those logistical expectations for administrative positions are at that institution. And then as they start kind of going through that process, the other thing I think would be important is realizing that as they apply for these positions, they are making that shift mentally, where you're going to go from a faculty member potentially to some sort of administrator within a system. And that's not good or bad. It's just potentially, depending on the system, it's very different.
Yeah.
So some of the kind of the autonomous life associated with the faculty member, you sometimes give up some of that. So this is essentially, for me, an 8 to 6 position, Monday through Friday, and then weekends as well. And that's not bad. That's not me, it's the worst thing ever, or anything like that. It's just, it's mentally and culturally, it's a shift from maybe how things have been done in the past.
Right.
Also realizing that there has to be kind of as you pursue these, I think you need to realize what your teaching and your research and your scholarship, those types of things, if those are a huge part of your life before, it doesn't mean that they can't exist, because there are some people that do some amazing research in administrative positions. They do some wonderful, impactful teaching. But sometimes the quantity of those activities is going to be impacted by some of the other administrative responsibilities that you have.
How would you mentor female or minority faculty that you're working with in any sort of different way to help them attain an administrative position?
I think what's really important is access and opportunity. And so talking to folks and saying, okay, from my personal experience, these are the things that I've seen that begin to prepare you in terms of skill sets, in terms of mentality, in terms of availability and things like that,
Yeah.
to pursue some of these positions, and then trying to create opportunities, spaces and places where folks can be involved in the activity or that work. You know, one of the things is, and I know service sometimes is a difficult thing to manage depending on the size of the school and or the expectations of the role. Some people have a lot of service obligation, and some have diminished or less service obligations. But if you're, let's say, in that category where you don't necessarily have a ton of service requirements as part of your position, I would encourage them to try and get on some of these university committees. And the reason I say that is because then you're able to access networks all across the institution, and you're able to see how those collisions and those interactions occur, because that really is a skill set that becomes important for, at least again in my experience, these administrative positions, because what you're doing is maybe you have counseling educators, educational psychologists, teacher preparation folks, sport managers all at the same table. And so what you're trying to do is focus on process and being able to find the commonalities for what appears on the surface sometimes to be very, very separated groups by industry and whatnot. And that would be my thing there, is to try and make sure that, now, don't get overextended, right? There's you know, trying to manage that and, you know, making sure that they have the expectations so they can still continue to do what they need to do, but being able to see how some of these decisions aren't usually just a moment in time, right? This is higher education. So there's kind of a story arc for how this works. And so being able to be a part of that story arc from the beginning to the middle to the end, I think that would be a skill set that's going to be really important. And also what that does is it allows these individuals to professionally network. You know, we talk a lot to our students about networking, and you're going to do that as you pursue administration as well. And whether that's within your institution or that's, you know, across those institutional boundaries and barriers and things like that. And really that's what something like COSMA would be to me, is an opportunity to get to meet people from a variety of different schools, large in terms of population, smaller in terms of population, public, private, minority serving versus PWI, being able to get to meet people from all these different backgrounds and experiences. That's going to be another way that these individuals are able to not just build the skill set, but really get to know the people that down the line are going to be in the positions to provide them an opportunity to be involved.
That's great. I think that's great advice and an interesting perspective. So thank you very much for talking with me today. Do you have anything else that you want to add here at the end?
No, I think it's just, you know, it's interesting. Administration is a new journey.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you make the transition from practitioner to educator, or from graduate student to educator, or educator to practitioner, as many of our folks kind of balance both those things. This is just in keeping with that ability to evolve, and you acquire the skill sets necessary, and you kind of fold it and mold it into however you approach things. There are some unique differences, but there's really nothing sort of, you know, I'm not splitting the atom here or anything like
Magical,
that.
right?
You know, you learn a new job, you do the best you can, you continue on that path, and that's about all you can ask for. Education provides an opportunity to, you know, to better individuals and communities, and that's, you're doing the exact same thing, just from a slightly different vantage point.
Right. Well, thanks again, Mark.
Of course, I appreciate it. I appreciate COSMA being able to put together some of these stories. I think it's going to be a wonderful resource for folks moving forward.
Thank you.